Chapter 35 Love Finds a Way. When last met, the menagerie was at the docks of Bodavir, looking for Joker, when Kaun noticed Joker's scent. After weaving through the crowds for a few minutes with Leste in tow, he found the scent was coming from an unfamiliar woman, who had familiar peridot eyes. Kaun began sniffing her for confirmation, and she began quietly protesting to the dragon, saying he was going to blow her cover as Leste butted in. In between apologies to try and hide the situation, she explained to Joker to meet up later, as they wanted to make sure he was safe with the arrival of the guard captains. Leste and the rest of the menagerie then departed to Perseus's hut, while Joker hid to get confirmation on what guard captains were present. At the hut, Perseus confirmed that there was nothing they could do to assist with making the potion for Damatanus, so the next priority was to find a place to sleep. Damatanus was invited to spend the night, but his hut was not big enough for the entire group, so the rest went off and explored sleeping options while Damatanus stayed with Perseus. The two chatted about their adventures while apart, with Damatanus highlighting the ichor they found at the anti-magic zone in Tael. Knowing Rivali magic was outside of Rival greatly concerned the both of them, but neither had a clue on how to address the situation. After they both got caught up, there was a nagging question in Damatanus' mind. What about the others from Rival? Sadly, neither had heard anything. Perseus knew the others made plans to escape, just like the two of them, but he also knew if he looked too much into finding the others, that could ruin a chance for them to escape, or worse yet, Rival could find out where he was. The only thing the both of them could do now was keep an ear out and hope, just like how they reunited today. The rest of the menagerie was quickly finding out that with a barter economy, inns practically did not exist, and instead, guilds or short-term workplaces existed for places to sleep. Of the options available, the menagerie decided to explore the Thistle Grove family farm. On their way out of the city and to the farm, Joker came back to the group, still disguised and not saying much about what information they collected. Knowing that one of the guard captains likely was Joker's ex, Leste and Kaun tried their best in assuring him to tag along when they went to talk to the captains. She wanted Kaun to learn their laws so he could make his own, and Kaun wanted the party present for his own comfort. He agreed, but his anxiety at the idea was all but too obvious, something Kaun helped with by walking beside Joker, letting his hand rest on his head. At the farm, the menagerie had a quick chat with Eldrin and Melia Thistlegrove, the owners of the estate, while Kaun entertained their daughter Leela as she flopped on his back in an attempt to ride the dragon, giggling the entire time. The two groups agreed to exchange labor for rooms, and with their work scheduled to start tomorrow, the menagerie swung by Perseus's hut to grab Damatanus, then headed off to the town guard's headquarters. When they entered, they were greeted by a female halfling receptionist, who was ecstatic about the idea of Kaun meeting with the guard captains. She quickly entered, then left the guard captain's office, letting the menagerie know guard captains Talon Derek and Deveris Nerik welcomed the idea. They just needed to wait so their meeting could get finished. Joker, even with the reassurance of being disguised, became anxious at the second name, and Kaun was there to comfort him while they waited. After a short time, the doors to the office opened, and maybe its menagerie were invited inside. Captain Talon Derek, an older human man, was sat behind a desk wearing properly maintained but entirely practical armor, while Captain Deveris Nerik, a darker-skinned half-elven woman, stood beside him, adorned in an elaborate armor. Both wore an expression of duty and of frustration at their current troubles. Joker was tense at the sight of Deveris, so Leste introduced the group as maybe its menagerie. She explained that Kaun was here to learn about Mirad, to potentially be an arbiter of law between Valhira and the rest of the world. To do this, he needed to know the cultures and people of the world, so she thought it best to learn from those who upheld the laws, and that's why they were here. This topic, however, took a back seat as Leste asked why two guard captains were present. Deveris explained she was asked to come help explore disappearances in Bodavir. They were not unheard of, and there could be many explanations for an individual going missing, but about a month ago, an entire hunting party disappeared without a trace, and that warranted additional investigations. No one in Bodavir could get any information, and Deveris' expedition just concluded with just as much information being found. Leste asked if they believed this to be the work of the Yazoo, as they dealt in secrecy, but the captains did not think so. Disappearances in Mirad increased ever since the Rival Civil War, and while no evidence ever came up directly blaming them, the leading theory was that it was tied to Raval in some aspect. After hearing the possible connection to Raval, Leste was determined to look into this more. The Yazoo kept leaving behind the ichor Domitanist recognized from Rivali magic, so she believed this could still be tied to the Yazoo, and if not, it still was something important to investigate. She asked if the guard would have any issue with the menagerie investigating this, and while they did have warnings about the difficulty and danger of this task, they understood they practically had no other options. Maybe its menagerie was allowed to pursue on behalf of Murad. Leste happily accepted, then turned the conversation to Kaun, and he began asking details about Murad's traditions, its people, and most importantly, its law. The guard captains were happy to entertain these broad topics of questions, not used to having someone so young care so much about rules and regulations. The conversation went smoothly, until Kaun grew curious about love in Murad. He knew that Valhira and Murad likely had similar opinions about the topic, given Kulid was both their patron deities, but he wanted to know what these captains felt love meant. When Deveris spoke up and said it was an extension of trust, Joker grew anxious. Kaun grew more curious, so he asked what to do when someone breaks that trust. Before she could answer, Joker began aggressively coughing, excusing himself out of the building with Leste quickly in tow. With the disturbance gone, she answered that she did not know. The conversation continued much the same past this question, but outside, Leste was consoling Joker. She quickly explained that Kaun asked this question because he did not know what to think about his parents. In a sense, they betrayed him by sending him out of his country away from his own people before he was born. Regardless of any valid reasons, it still broke his trust of them to an extent. Joker understood why he asked, but he could not stand to hear Deveris' answer. It was not his place to know, and he did not want to know. Leste gave him a moment to collect himself and calm down, then told him that Kaun looked up to him. Kaun wanted him present because he loves him and saw him as a role model. Joker chuckled at that, mocking how he could be seen as a good role model given how many mistakes he made. Leste fought him on this. Any person does not get to choose who looks up to them or why, and there are good qualities Kaun sees in Joker that he wants to be. Regardless of what Joker wanted, he is a good role model to Kaun. Joker tried to end the conversation saying that he should look up to the Bulwark instead, but Leste was adamant in defending her son's role model. In mocking disbelief at the defense, Joker asked her if she really expected him not to notice how she looked at the Bulwark, implying both as a role model and maybe something more. Leste protested again, this time defending herself. Joker's social norms were different from her own, and any admiration thrown the Bulwark's way was just how she was raised to admire someone of such inspiring status. This defense was paused as Deveris walked out of the headquarters. Both were quietly nervous until she was out of earshot, then Joker apologized, correcting himself by instead asking if Leste expected him not to notice how the Bulwark looked at her as he started walking back to the headquarters. Leste began spiraling and overthinking about every conversation she could remember with the Bulwark. To her, the Bulwark was something so unattainable, the idea of romance never even crossed her mind. But with Joker planting that seed of doubt, she couldn't help but connect some things. The way he jumped as she wrapped her tail around his at Kaun's celebration, his smile that lit up the room as he saw Leste teleported to the Miraday Circle. These had to just be coincidences that Joker noticed, and nothing more, right? Leste raced to Joker and began yipping at him about what his comment was supposed to mean, and what looks the Bulwark was giving her. He paid her no mind as he walked right back into the headquarters with a smug grin on his face. With that, let us continue.